They tested her DNA 3 times, and every time the results came back wrong. Not slightly off, not inconclusive, wrong. As if the woman buried in that tomb, the woman they had spent decades calling a queen, had never existed at all. Or worse, as if someone had made very sure she couldn't be found. This is the story of Nefertiti, one of the most powerful women who ever ruled the ancient world. A queen so famous that her face has been reproduced more than almost any other in history. And yet, we don't know where she is. We don't know who she really was. And the DNA evidence that was supposed to solve the mystery has only made it deeper. Let's go back to the beginning. Around 1370 BCE, a woman entered the Egyptian royal court and changed everything. Her name meant, "The beautiful one has come." And she was, by every account we have, extraordinary. Nefertiti became the great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king who shattered 3,000 years of Egyptian religion and replaced an entire pantheon of gods with a single solar deity, the Aten. But Nefertiti was not merely a consort, she was a co-ruler. Some scholars believe she governed alongside her husband as an equal. Depictions of her in temple reliefs show her in poses traditionally reserved for pharaohs alone, smiting enemies, leading rituals, commanding armies. She wore the double crown. She carried the crook and flail. She was not standing behind the king, she was standing beside him. And she was everywhere, carved into stone walls from Karnak to Amarna, painted on tomb murals, cast in bronze. Her image spread across an empire. When the famous limestone bust of Nefertiti was carved, that iconic blue crown, that long neck, those perfectly symmetrical features, it was meant to capture someone real, someone whose power was visible and undeniable. Then, in approximately the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign, she vanishes. No announcement, no burial record, no final scene. She simply disappears from the historical record, as completely as if she had been erased. One of the most prominent figures in the ancient world, gone. Historians have argued for over a century about what happened. Did she die? Did she fall from power? Did she change her name and continue ruling under a different identity? Nobody knows. And that is where the real mystery begins. Because Nefertiti left no confirmed tomb. She left no confirmed mummy. For decades, that seemed like an absence, a gap in the record, the kind of thing that happens when 3,000 years separate us from the evidence. But as modern archaeology developed and as DNA science became capable of things that would have seemed like magic to previous generations of scholars, that absence started to feel less like a gap. It started to feel like a choice. Beginning in the 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s and 2010s, Egyptologists began to focus on a group of mysterious, unidentified mummies found in royal tombs in and around the Valley of the Kings. These mummies had no names attached to them. Some were found in unexpected places, in tombs that didn't belong to them, in chambers that had been resealed, in locations that suggested movement and concealment after the original burial. Among them was a mummy that came to be known simply as the Younger Lady. Discovered in Cave 535, the tomb of Amenhotep II, she had been stripped of her original wrappings, her burial goods, every marker of identity. Her face had been deliberately damaged. Her mummy had been desecrated in a way that suggested intent. Someone, at some point, had wanted her identity destroyed. She was young when she died. Her skeletal age placed her death somewhere in her mid-20s to early 30s. She was clearly of high status, and when researchers began to analyze the mummies of the Amarna period, the royal family of Nefertiti and Akhenaten, she became a candidate, a serious candidate. Then came the DNA. In 2010, a team of Egyptian scientists led by Zahi Hawass published a landmark study in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They had extracted DNA from multiple royal mummies and attempted to build a genetic family tree of the Amarna royal family. The results identified Tutankhamun's parents, most probably Akhenaten, and a woman designated as the Younger Lady. This was extraordinary. Tutankhamun, the most famous pharaoh in history, had his lineage traced through molecular forensics across 3,000 years. But the same study raised more questions than it answered. The genetic markers showed something unexpected. The Younger Lady shared DNA with Tutankhamun, placing her in the immediate royal line. But her full lineage, her parents, her origins, where she came from before she entered the royal family, could not be cleanly resolved. The DNA pointed toward the Amarna bloodline, but it did not confirm who she was. Was she Nefertiti? Some researchers said yes. The age was consistent. The status was consistent. The deliberate destruction of her identity markers was consistent with the systematic erasure that followed the Amarna period, when subsequent pharaohs attempted to eliminate all traces of Akhenaten's heresy and everyone associated with it. But others pushed back, hard, because here is where it gets genuinely unsettling. If the younger lady was Nefertiti, then the DNA profile should have matched known relatives. But the matches were incomplete, ambiguous. The family connections that should have been clear, given everything we think we know about the Amarna royal family, contained gaps, mismatches, points where the genetic lineage simply did not line up with the historical record as it is currently understood. There are 5 ways to explain this, and each one is more troubling than the last. The first is the simplest: wrong mummy. The younger lady is not Nefertiti. Nefertiti's remains are still out there, somewhere, unidentified. Her tomb was either never found, is hidden, or was thoroughly concealed. The DNA is telling us the truth. This is a different woman, someone close to the royal line, but not the queen we are looking for. The second possibility is more complex. Nefertiti was using another name. This was not unusual in ancient Egypt. Royal figures changed names to mark religious transformations, political shifts, new identities. If Nefertiti adopted a new name and a new role in the final years of her life, her mummy might exist under that name, in that identity. And no one has yet connected the physical remains back to the woman we call Nefertiti. The third possibility has been seriously debated by Egyptologists for decades. Around the time Nefertiti disappears, a new figure appears in the record, a pharaoh, or co-pharaoh, named Nefertiti. The name is linked to Nefertiti. It may even contain her name as part of its full form. Some scholars believe Nefertiti was Nefertiti herself, elevated to the status of pharaoh, ruling either alongside Akhenaten in his final years or immediately after his death, before Tutankhamun came to power. If this is true, then we have been looking for a queen, but the evidence may be pointing to a pharaoh. The fourth possibility concerns lineage. The DNA evidence from the Amarna royal family has revealed inbreeding to a degree that complicates any attempt to map the family tree. Brother-sister marriages, parent-child marriages, unions that would seem impossible by modern standards. These were common in the royal line, intended to preserve divine bloodlines. When the genetic relationships are this compressed, mismatches and ambiguities in the DNA are not anomalies. They are expected. The data may be accurate and still be impossible to interpret cleanly. But the fifth theory is the one that does not leave easily. The historical record from the Amarna period was deliberately destroyed. We know this. After Akhenaten died and the political winds shifted back toward the old religion, the name of the heretic pharaoh was chiseled off monuments. His image was defaced. The city of Amarna was dismantled. Temples were torn down. And the people who had been closest to him, his wives, his co-rulers, his children, had their own records altered, suppressed, or eliminated entirely. This was not historical accident. This was a targeted erasure. And if Nefertiti was erased, systematically, intentionally, by political actors with the power to rewrite history, then every piece of evidence we have may already be corrupted. Her tomb may not merely be hidden. It may have been destroyed. Her records may not merely be incomplete. They may have been falsified. And the DNA, threading back through 3,000 years of deliberate obfuscation, may be giving us signals from a lineage that no longer exists in the form we are trying to find. Which means the most uncomfortable truth may be this: we are not simply missing information about Nefertiti. We may be looking at a historical record that was specifically designed to make her unfindable. In 2015, British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves proposed that a hidden chamber existed behind the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb, and that Nefertiti might be buried inside it. Radar scans initially seemed to support this. The world held its breath. Subsequent analysis cast doubt on the results. The chamber may be there, or it may not. The debate continues. In 2022, new studies of the K535 mummies added further layers to the DNA evidence, refining the relationships but not resolving the central question. The younger lady's full identity remains contested. The origin of Nefertiti's bloodline remains uncertain. The gap in the record where she should appear remains exactly that, a gap. Somewhere out there, in a desert that has been excavated and re-excavated for over a century, Nefertiti may still be waiting. Or she may have been erased so thoroughly that we will never find her. The DNA gave us answers, just not the ones we were expecting. And the deeper we go into the evidence, the more a single question takes shape, not about genetics, not about archaeology, but about the nature of history itself. When the most powerful people in the ancient world decided that someone should not be remembered, how far were they willing to go? And how much of what we think we know has already been rewritten? We don't know where Nefertiti is. We may never know. But the silence where her story should be, that is not an absence. That is a message.